What is we talking about, boy? Shout out to all my supporters. I've been getting a lot of love lately. I love all of you. Listen, shout out to my atheist friends too. I've been making atheists real mad lately. Sometimes, when I talk, it's a stream of reflections. It's not anything that I really super prepare for. I'm just like, I have an idea and then I just kind of want to go off. You know what I mean? So when I say I don't think atheists exist, I'm not trying to be offensive, as crazy as that sounds. What's cracking? Complex, my guy, what's happening? Listen, when I say I don't think atheists exist, I don't mean to be offensive. What I mean is, I don't know if you really know what you're saying. When you say I don't believe in God, you're saying, I believe that my mind is not the product of another mind, right? That my mind is the product of something, of chance and necessity. Which is to say that it's not really a mind at all. Like, your thoughts and behaviors are the result of electrical activity in your frontal cortex, which just kind of boggles my mind. But I don't want to get off track. My daughter, I have a 1-month-old daughter. Greatest gift my wife could have given me. I have a 1-month-old baby girl. And I remember in Colorado Springs, a group of atheists invited me to an anti-apologetics roundtable discussion, right? I'm an apologist. An apologist is somebody who gives an answer, right? Who provides evidence and proof. And I've gone away from that over the years. But in Colorado Springs, I was invited to a roundtable discussion with a group of atheists. And they were counter-apologists. So they wanted to figure out what was the best critique of theism, the greatest critique of the idea that God could possibly exist. And some of them were saying, we don't know what created the universe. It's like, okay, that's cool, we can get into that. A lot of people kind of attacked the ontological argument, the Kalam cosmological argument, things like that. But the best, and still to this day, the best critique of the existence of God, the best thing you can say, or the thing that causes theists to pause the most, will always be, if God exists, why do terrible things happen to children, to innocent people? And there's a lot of responses that you can give to something like that. But regardless of the response that you do give, it's an excellent question. It's something that everybody who believes in God should take seriously. Why do evil things happen in this world? If there's a benevolent, all-powerful God who has the ability and the desire not to see those things come to pass. And check this out. That difficult question of why does God allow evil things to happen to good people, quote-unquote good people, right? It can be answered in a number of ways. And one of my favorite answers to that question was given by Nietzsche. Yes, the same Friedrich Nietzsche who said God is dead. He said, insofar as we believe in morality, we pass sentence on existence. He didn't believe that morality was a thing. So Nietzsche's answer to the question of why does God allow evil would be, Nietzsche's answer to the question, why does God allow evil, would be, there is no such thing, right? There's no such thing as evil. There's no such thing as an ought or an ought not. So, man, I'm drawing a blank in my brain right now. But if there's no such thing as an ought or an ought not, then you can't say that there is evil, right? That's his response. It's like, evil, the reason evil exists in the world, or evil does not exist in the world, according to Nietzsche, and according to minds like Dawkins. Chris Hunts, what's up, my guy? Evil is objective, complex. I completely agree. Evil is not subjective. But check it out. I want to return to the topic of my daughter, right? So I'm struggling in my mind with this question, which all apologists, all Christian apologists, Buddhist apologists, anyone who believes in a benevolent concept of reality, you have to wrestle with the idea that evil is allowed to happen in this world for some reason. And having a daughter solved this question in my mind. Having a daughter solved this question in my mind. Because when she was born, I immediately felt omnibenevolent regarding her. Now, hear me out. I'm not saying that I became God, right? I'm saying when she was born, I immediately had only good thoughts and intentions and desires for her entire future and for her entire life. I was also the closest thing to omnipotent in her life. Like the amount of power I have versus the amount of power she has there's a giant chasm there, right? So hear me out. I have this daughter, and in my mind, I'm wrestling with the apologetics question of why does God allow evil to happen to good people? Now, my daughter was born with what's called a lip tie. I mean, if any of you guys have kids, some of you guys might have had kids that are born with lip ties. It's a common thing, and she had to have a procedure done, and my wife and I agreed she was going to have the procedure done. A lip tie, like if you stick your tongue up to the top of your gums, you'll feel like a little tie there. So some kids, when they're born, that tie is too low to the bottom lip, and it makes it so that their top lip doesn't bend up the way it should, and to properly latch onto a nipple. So it was a big problem, that lip tie problem. And so we wanted to have that done. We went in, shout out to Dr. Hussein, by the way, who did the procedure. We had to hold her down. Imagine this, right? This little girl who's not even 3 days old yet, you're holding her in your arms, you're bonding with her. This is somebody that you love, you promise to care for the next 18 years or whatever. And then in a surgeon's office, you have to hold her down. Me and her mother were restraining her arms and legs as this surgeon clips this lip tie. And she's screaming in pain. Remember, from her limited perspective, this is the worst thing that's ever happened in her life, right? She's only had 3 days of life so far, right? But this is by far the most painful, the most gut-wrenching thing that she could ever have experienced, this lip tie procedure. And I know in my heart of hearts, this is helping her, right? This pain that she's going through is for her benefit. I know this because I'm also omniscient with respect to her. Now, I'm not saying I know everything about the world, but with respect to her, there is a giant chasm. There's a giant difference between the things that I know and understand and the things that she knows and understands. So while she's getting this painful procedure done, and her mother and I are holding her down so that the surgeon can cut that lip tie, I know in my mind and in my heart that what's happening right now is for her benefit. But from her limited perspective, understand, because this answers the problem of evil. And this is, for the rest of my life, I'm going to use this as an answer to this question. From her limited perspective, this is the most painful thing she's ever experienced. I mean, think about this with respect to our relationship to God. Some things that we go through that we consider this is the most painful experience ever. Why would a benevolent God allow this to happen? Right? I bet that if my daughter were conscious enough and coherent enough and could carry a stream of thoughts long enough, she would have thought in that surgeon's room, she would have thought in that surgeon's office, why are my mother and father holding me down and allowing this terrible thing to happen to me? Why are my mother and father holding me down and restraining me and allowing this terrible thing to happen to me? Remember, she's 3 days old. She has no concept that this is a lip tie, that this procedure is going to help her drink milk more efficiently and grow. Same thing with the EPK. I might have the syllables wrong, but they do this procedure when she's only a week old, where they poke her foot, and she's bleeding out of her foot, and they have to capture so much blood, on this little piece of paper, and she's screaming as this nurse slowly takes blood out of the bottom of her foot. Right? She's less than a week old when this happens. And so as she's screaming, she's looking at me, my daughter, my week-old daughter, And of course she can't stabilize her eyes on me. She can't directly, but for a second, she's looking in my direction like, Dad, why are you allowing this person to pull blood out of my foot? And I'm screaming for help and you're not stepping in, right? And I begin to think about this problem of evil that we go through, about how we question God and we say, God, why aren't you rescuing me from this thing? Right? I think I understand it because all I have is my own mind. Same thing as my daughter. She's 3 days old when she got the lip tie procedure. She's a week old when she got the EPK procedure. Both of them painful. One had her bleeding out of her mouth, when they had to correct that, that lip tie in her mouth. And one had her bleeding out of her foot. As a 3-day-old person and then a week-old person, these are the worst experiences in her entire life. You know what I'm saying? And when people say to me, why does God allow bad things to happen to people? You have to understand that just like my daughter, with respect to me and holding her down during those painful procedures, God's mind and his knowledge is so far beyond what ours is that we may be experiencing something which leads to our growth in the future. And we just don't know it because our minds to God is like my daughter's mind to me. That was powerful, bro. To me, that bugged me out. The problem of evil is sufficiently solved, in my opinion, by children, bro. If you're a mother, if you're a father, and you have children, and you've been with them, when they were born. I was in the room when my daughter was born. My wife is a gangster, bro. Let me talk to you about it. My wife is a gangster. My wife self-delivered the baby. When the baby's arms came out, she grabbed the baby by the arms and pulled the baby out like Lion King. Savannah. Bro, it was touching. It was beautiful. And from that moment, I was just full. I was full of a benevolence that I had never felt before. This was all part of the message. This was all part of what God was trying to teach me. I was filled in that moment with a benevolence that I felt was supernatural. A love that I've never felt that I've had for anyone. The person that I love most in my life, of course, is my wife. And then, my daughter, people like my mom. But in that moment, I just felt like, yo, this is weird. I didn't know that this type of love was possible. I didn't know that this level of benevolence was possible for a human being. This was all part of God teaching me that lesson. And I also felt the difference. I felt the difference in intelligence. That's where God's omniscience comes in. Think about those of you who have kids. Think about how much you know compared to your newborn son or daughter. I don't know if you thought about that during their first couple of hours on earth. It's like, man, does she have any idea how much I care about her? Does she even know that I'm her dad? She thinks I'm this weird bearded guy. You feel me? Like, I don't even know at this point. She's a month old at this point. I don't even know if she realizes at this point that I'm her dad. I know that she's used to me. She's used to my smell. She's used to how I feel, the chest to chest. But man, it really trips me out. It's something that I will always think about when people ask me the question, why does God allow evil things to happen to good people? Because I could only imagine that my daughter, when that was happening to her, when the lip tie procedure was happening, when the EPK was happening, that she was wondering, where is my advocate in this desperate time of need? You know what I'm saying? Where is my advocate in this desperate time of need, where this surgeon is cutting, at my gum line? Why are my father and mother restraining me as this person does something painful that I don't understand? It's the reason Scripture says, honor the Lord your God with all your heart and lean not toward your own understanding, right? If my daughter had the capacity to lean on her own understanding, she would have come to the conclusion that I was corrupt. Hear me out. If my daughter had the mental capacity to lean on her own understanding, she would have come to the conclusion that I was corrupt. Why did my daddy hold my legs down and hold my arms down as the surgeon did the lip tie procedure? Why did my mother hold me down while I was getting my foot poked by the nurse, right? Luckily, she doesn't have that, that bandwidth mentally, right? You know what I'm saying? It's really, really, really a trip. The reason we're to honor God and lean not on our own understandings, especially when we're going through a trying situation, is because we are to God just like our sons and daughters are to us. They don't understand why they're going through these painful things, getting their first shots and things like that. I mean, it was traumatizing. I can legit say it was traumatizing. Going through those procedures with my daughter. But I had to share that. I had to share that with you. Because I think that, at least to me, sufficiently solves the question of why God allows evil, why a loving and benevolent God would allow evil. Because I am super benevolent when it comes to my daughter, and yet I allowed her to go through these painful procedures that she didn't understand, because they would lead to her benefit. And she had no idea they would lead to her benefit. There was nothing in her capacity that could see that. And we have to understand that we are in that same position. I feel like I'm getting redundant, so I'm going to close it off right here. But I wanted to holler at you guys about that because that just hit me yesterday. And I was hanging out with my daughter. I had the late night shift, so I'm kind of sleepy. Love y'all.